My name is Rowan Ellis. I'm 35. And the day everything quietly shifted started with an email that had no subject line, just one sentence. I think this belonged to your father. Attached was a photo of a worn, silver-gray aviation compass. Engraved on the side, barely visible but unmistakable. Always find your bearing, Dad. I stood up so fast my chair squeaked across the floor. That compass, I hadn't seen it in a while, but I always knew where it was. At least, I thought I did. Dad had given it to me the night before I left for aviation school. He wasn't a man of speeches. He just pressed it into my palm and said, "Whenever you feel lost, use this." I kept it with me through every move, every job, every late night inside engine bays and hangars. It wasn't worth much, but it was the one thing I never let go of. I walked down the hall to the bedroom, opened the top drawer of my desk. Empty, no box, no compass, nothing. I felt my throat tighten. From behind me, Ethan spoke. "You looking for something?" He leaned against the doorway, sipping his coffee like it was any other Tuesday. "The compass," I said. "My dad's, the aviation one." He blinked. "That old thing, the military-looking one." I nodded, he shrugged. "I thought maybe someone cleaned it up. Sandra's been organizing stuff lately, hasn't she?" Sandra, my late father's second wife. She and her son Riley had been living in the house since Dad passed 2 years ago. It was still technically my house, deeded to me, but these days it felt more like I was just renting space in my own memories. I checked every drawer, every shelf. Nothing. Ethan tilted his head like I was being dramatic. "Are you sure you didn't misplace it? I mean, it's just a compass." Just a compass. That's when I realized he didn't get it. Not really. Not what it meant. Not what it carried. Not what was missing now that it was gone. I sat down and reopened the email. Scrolled down. From Jackson Keene, Light Airfield, St. Louis County. The name sparked something. Jackson had been one of Dad's old test flight partners back in the early 2000s. They'd flown together, worked on nav systems. I vaguely remembered him from a barbecue we had when I was a teen. Big hands, louder laugh. The kind of guy who always had grease under his fingernails. I typed a quick reply. "That compass was mine. It disappeared from my room recently. Who brought it to you?" His response came 30 minutes later. Young guy, mid-20s, said he needed cash for a crypto startup. But the second I saw the compass, I recognized it. "Your dad used to keep it clipped to his gear bag. I didn't sell it. I held on to it. Felt like, if someone was still out there looking for direction, it should go back to the hands that needed it most." I didn't need to ask who the young guy was. Crypto, cash, no concept of boundaries. Riley. Jackson's shop was exactly where I remembered it. A converted hangar near the edge of a decommissioned airfield, tucked behind a weather-beaten fuel depot and a chain-link fence sagging with age. The kind of place where stories gathered dust, and people like my dad used to fix things that couldn't be replaced. He met me outside, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. "You look just like him," he said before I could even speak. I offered a tight smile. "So I've been told." He motioned me inside. Kid who brought it in couldn't even tell me how to open it right. Said it was a vintage collector's item. But when I popped the top open, wrong way, of course, I saw that engraving. I remembered it from back in the day. Your dad kept it on him like a damn wedding ring. He walked over to the counter and pulled out a small lockbox. Inside, on a square of navy velvet, lay the compass. It looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just gotten bigger since the last time I held it. I reached out, fingers trembling. The metal was cool, but it pulsed with something warmer beneath. "I knew it wasn't his," Jackson said. "The kid was too smooth, said it was his late grandfather, S. But your dad never let that thing out of his sight. Not even during engine fires or hard landings." He watched me turn it over slowly. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "There's something else." He leaned in, dropping his voice. "I don't think this compass is just a compass." I blinked. "What do you mean?" When I opened it for inspection, I noticed a seam, tiny, along the rim, like it had a second layer. I didn't push it too far. Figured if your dad rigged it, he had a reason. He handed me a small flat tool, thin as a guitar pick. "Here, try it." I slotted it gently under the edge of the metal rim and twisted. There was a soft click, and the back panel slid open. Inside was a slip of aged paper, folded so tightly it looked like thread. My heart thudded. I unfolded it slowly, careful not to tear it. Dad's handwriting. Small, precise, familiar in a way that made my throat ache. Rowan, if you're reading this, it means the compass got moved. That's okay. I planned for that. Go to the cabin. Coordinates are on the back of this note, keys in the level inside my old toolbox. What's in that cabin is yours, all of it. Use it when you need to find your own bearing. Dad, I flipped the note over. There it was. Latitude, longitude, cabin address. A place I hadn't heard mentioned in years. Dad used to go there once a year. Said it was just for peace and sky. No cell signal, no guests, no explanation. Back then, I thought he just needed quiet. Now I wasn't so sure. Jackson let out a low whistle. Looks like the old man was smarter than all of us. I nodded, eyes fixed on the note. Not because of what it promised, money, maybe, or documents, but because of what it meant. He thought ahead. He'd known someone might try to take what wasn't theirs. So he hid something deeper, beneath the thing no one would suspect had value. Not the compass, but direction. Montana in November feels like a place made for silence. Pine needles on the wind, cloud cover so low it brushes the hills, roads that forget to end. I drove for hours past everything I once thought was familiar, past where the GPS stopped giving directions, past cell service, past doubt. The compass sat in the passenger seat beside me, closed, solid, steady. It didn't point north anymore, not in the way it used to. Now it pointed me somewhere else entirely. Dad had told me about the cabin once, maybe twice. Said it was just a place to breathe. Said I wouldn't like it. No Wi-Fi, no electricity, no running water. What he didn't say was that it was hidden behind a collapsed fence and a rusted-out mailbox that still had his name on it. Ellis, no address, just the name. I parked at the base of a gravel path and walked the rest of the way. The air was cold enough to sting. The sky was that early winter blue, the kind that makes everything feel older than it really is. The cabin looked like something from a forgotten postcard. Sloped roof, hand-built porch, a single window with drawn curtains, dust on the steps, pine cones in the doorway. But the lock was brand new, combination style, waiting. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the old yellow level from Dad's toolbox. It had been wedged deep under some screwdrivers and coiled wire in the garage, just like he said. Inside the bubble chamber, hidden behind a thin film of plastic, was a small, black key. I slid it into the bottom of the lock. It clicked open without hesitation. The door creaked in a way that made my breath catch, and then I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell, wood smoke, leather, and time. Then the books, shelves of them, flight manuals, engineering journals, philosophy paperbacks with dog-eared pages. On the table sat a manila folder, a weathered leather-bound notebook, and a fireproof safe. I didn't touch anything at first. I just stood there, letting the quiet settle around me. This wasn't just a retreat, it was a vault, a backup plan for something Dad knew he wouldn't get to finish himself. I opened the folder. Inside were printed financial statements. Holdings in a private investment fund under an alias I recognized only because it matched an old inside joke between us. Skyline bearings. The current balance, $198,724. Next to it was a signed power of attorney transfer. My name, my signature line. Ready? I moved to the leather notebook next. His handwriting filled every page. Entries about flight tests, engineering notes, business ideas, even stories I'd told him as a kid, preserved like they mattered. Then, a second letter. This time longer. Rowan, I didn't leave you money to save you. I left you time. Time to figure out what matters. Time to walk away if you need to. Time to not rush into someone else's version of your life. The compass was just the key. The direction is yours, your mom. She loved you in her way. But she always believed loud meant right. I never did. You were always quiet like me. Steady. Observant. The kind of person who builds something that lasts, even if no one applauds for it. If you're reading this, you're probably standing in the place I used to go when the world got too noisy. I hope it gives you the same peace it gave me. One last thing. If that boyfriend of yours still doesn't understand why this compass mattered, let him go. You deserve someone who sees what's priceless even when it doesn't sparkle. With love, always, Dad. I sat down on the floor. The light from the single window stretched across the wood planks like a soft whisper. He hadn't just left me something. He'd prepared something for me, something deliberate, something hidden, not because I couldn't stand on my own, but because one day, someone would try to take my footing out from under me. And he wanted me to have a way to stand back up, not just with money, with direction. By the time I got back, the leaves had finished falling. The house looked the same, too much the same. Same porch light flickering overhead. Same garden tools Riley never put away. Same silence between rooms that pretended to be home, but I was different. And that difference arrived with me. Ethan was at the kitchen table, half focused on his laptop, half listening to a podcast about AI startups. He looked up when I walked in and gave me that usual half smile, like everything was normal. Hey, you didn't call. I wasn't in the mood to be talked out of it. He blinked. Of what? I dropped my keys on the table. Of going. Of listening to my father. There was a pause, a brief moment where I thought he might ask me what I found. He didn't. Instead, he nodded toward my bag. So, what did you dig up out there? A map to buried treasure. I stared at him, then said calmly, documents, a financial trust, and proof that Riley stole more than just the compass. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Oh, come on, Ro. Don't go all crusader over this. It was a mix-up. People make dumb decisions when they're broke and desperate. I didn't say anything. He leaned back in his chair. Besides, you've got money now, right? You could actually help Riley out, help us out. I've been talking to a few investors, real opportunities. We could get ahead of this. And there it was, the real ask, not concern, not apology, not understanding, just the next angle, the next pitch. I'm not funding you, I said. He frowned. Excuse me. I'm not bankrolling your ambitions, and I'm not overlooking what Riley did. He stole from me. Technically, he began. I cut him off. Don't you dare rationalize theft just because it's family. He stood up. Jesus, Rowan, it's just a damn compass. I stared at him for a long, steady beat. No, I said quietly. It was the last thing my father ever gave me. And it led me to the only part of him the world hadn't already stolen. So no, it wasn't just a compass. He fell silent. I could see it clear as daylight. He wasn't sorry. He was calculating whether or not I was still worth staying with now that I'd drawn a line. Before he could say anything else, I turned and walked out of the room. Sandra and Riley were in the den. Bank statements spread across the coffee table like dirty laundry. They looked up the second I stepped in. Riley's face froze. Sandra blinked fast, like she hadn't expected me back so soon. I know what you did, I said, voice calm level. The compass, the designs, the crypto pitch. I didn't think it would matter, Riley said quickly. It was just sitting there. Dad never talked about what it meant. He wasn't your dad, I said, colder than I intended. Sandra flinched. Rowan, she began, please don't let this ruin what's left of this family. This family, I said evenly, ended when you let your son rob me and said nothing. He needed a chance. He needed boundaries, I snapped. But instead of teaching him accountability, you handed him someone else's legacy and called it ambition. Riley stood up defensively. I'll pay it back, he said. When the app launches, when funding comes through. I shook my head. You won't because you can't, and because you never plan to. That night I packed my things, not everything. Just the pieces that still felt like mine, a few books, a jacket my father gave me, the compass, the notebook. Ethan watched me from the hallway. You're really going through with this? He asked. I already did. I zipped the suitcase and walked out. No grand exit. No slammed doors, just the quiet click of a lock behind me. Some things you forgive, some things you fight to recover. And some things you walk away from so they can never touch you again. 2 days later, I walked into the office of a woman who didn't flinch when I said the words. My father died 2 years ago, and I just found a ledger proving he was never paid for multiple aerospace contracts. Her name was Diane Vasquez. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of lawyer who made other lawyers nervous in the courtroom. She flipped through the leather-bound notebook I brought like it was an artifact. Every number was neat, every client listed, every balance still owed. She tapped her pen against one page in particular. Aeronavis Defense, $27,000, billed, never paid. They're still active, I said. Same CEO, same offices in Missouri. Diane nodded. Which means we're not just dealing with old debt. We're dealing with potential breach of contract, interest, and even fraud if they tried to bury it. She closed the book. Your father kept immaculate records. And these signatures. She pointed to the scanned copies tucked into the folder. Are gold. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. And the investment account? I asked. It's in an alias. Skyline Bearings. My name isn't on any official papers, just his letter. Diane smiled, slow and confident. That alias is registered as a discretionary trust, and guess what? You're listed as sole beneficiary. We'll have it transferred by the end of next week. She leaned back. You may not have known what he was doing all those years, but let me be clear. Your father built a damn fortress around your future. I nodded quietly, grateful, overwhelmed, a little ashamed that I'd ever doubted him, but also ready. That night, I stayed in a hotel downtown. Clean, quiet. I opened the notebook again, ran my hand over the page with my father's handwriting. He hadn't asked me to fight, but he'd left me every tool I needed if I chose to, and I was choosing. Over the next 3 weeks, Diane filed claims with 6 separate contractors. Some responded quickly, panicked settlement offers to make the claims disappear. Others tried to ghost us. They didn't realize who was behind the paperwork now. By the end of the first month, we'd recovered $43,000 in unpaid invoices. 3 companies settled outright. 1 paid with interest. 1 even called to apologize, said they thought Ellis Engineering closed after the diagnosis. I didn't say what I was thinking, that my father hadn't closed anything. They had just stopped answering his calls. Meanwhile, I used a portion of the trust to purchase a building. Not large, not flashy, but solid, historic, brick walls and steel beams. It was 5 blocks from the airstrip where Dad first taught me how to read a wind chart. I put the compass in a display case by the door. Underneath it, a plaque, Bearing Foundation, built for those finding their direction. It wasn't a company, it was a space. For engineers, for veterans, for students without connections but with curiosity. I didn't need to make a fortune. I just needed to give back the kind of start my father gave me. Quiet. Steady, real, Ethan texted, twice. Heard you bought a building, that's big. Maybe we were both just under pressure. We could talk, start over. I didn't answer, there was nothing left to say. Riley tried calling too. His voice on the voicemail was oddly cheerful. Said his crypto partner had backed out, and he was looking for bridge funding. Mentioned he'd learned a lot and was thinking long-term now. He ended with, we're family, right? I sent one thing back, a scanned image of my police report for stolen property. His name circled. No caption, no emoji, just clarity. The calls stopped. One morning, I sat in the new office alone. The air smelled like fresh paint and old books. I opened the compass. Not because I needed direction, just because it felt like home. Inside was still that tiny folded note. The coordinates faded now, but the message remained. Use it when you need to find your own bearing. The letter came on a Wednesday, cream-colored envelope. Thick paper, my name written in a handwriting that tried too hard to be soft. Sandra Ellis. No return address, but I didn't need one. I sat with it for a while, didn't open it at first, just let it sit there beside my coffee, like a ghost of someone still pretending to be a person. Eventually, I slid my thumb beneath the seal. Rowan, I know I may not be the person you want to hear from right now, but I'm writing this not just as your stepmother, but as someone who has made mistakes and regrets how things happened. I never meant for the compass to go missing. I didn't know Riley took it until later, and by then, things had already moved too far. I thought I was helping him find his path. I didn't realize it meant stepping over yours. I know we've had our differences, but I always hoped we could find a way to be some version of family. Your father wanted peace. Maybe you could still find it with us someday. Also, if you plan to keep the house, would you consider selling back our share? Riley has been staying in the guest room again, and we'd like some clarity moving forward. Warmly. Sandra. I stared at the last line. Warmly. I folded the letter in half and dropped it into the drawer without a word. Not because it upset me, but because I'd finally reached the point where her words didn't mean anything. Not warmth, not regret, not family. Just shape-shifting guilt packaged in cursive. A week later, she showed up in person. I heard her heels before I saw her, clicking across the polished floor of the Baring Foundation office. She stepped inside like she expected a receptionist. There wasn't one, it was just me, sitting at the front desk, cataloging blueprint donations. She paused, blinked at the space. The steel beams, the name etched in glass, it must have hit her all at once. I'd built something, quietly, permanently. Without them, Rowan, she said, cautious. I looked up. Sandra. She held a shopping bag in one hand. Inside it, a picture frame, my dad's from his old desk. When I hadn't seen since the house changed, she set it down. I thought maybe you should have this. I didn't reach for it, she waited. I read your letter, I said, her smile faltered. And, I'm not angry, I said, not anymore. She seemed to breathe, a little. But I'm also not interested in performing forgiveness to make other people more comfortable. Her mouth opened slightly, as if she'd rehearsed a reply but didn't like how it fit the moment. I didn't know what Riley was planning. You didn't ask, I interrupted. You didn't ask when the compass disappeared. You didn't ask when he started pawning off the rest. You didn't ask when you saw me packing my bags. That was the part that made it clear. She swallowed. I know I didn't handle it right, she said. But you have to understand, I was trying to protect my son. I understand that, I said. And I hope someday someone protects him from himself, but that won't be me. She looked down at the floor, then back at the photo frame. I'd like to buy back the house, she said. Riley's still there. It'd be simpler legally. I nodded. I'll have my lawyer send the paperwork. Market price, no discounts. Her eyes widened. But it's not about revenge, Sandra. It's about boundaries. You never understood mine, but you will respect them now. She stood in silence. Then quietly, he would have wanted us to get along. I looked at her and said what I hadn't said since the funeral. No, he would have wanted you to treat me like I belonged. You didn't, and now it's too late. She left the photo behind. That was the only thing she got right. That night, I placed the frame on a shelf above my desk. Dad standing beside an old biplane, smiling like the sun was behind the camera, grease on his hands, that same quiet pride in his eyes. The compass clipped to his belt. I stared at it for a long time, not because I missed him, but because I felt him in the stillness. I didn't need his approval. I already had his belief. He left it behind, in every system he built, in every hidden document, in every quiet word folded into a piece of metal that no one thought mattered. The last name in my father's ledger had no dollar amount, just 4 words. Richardson Aerospace, never paid. No invoice number, no check record, just a thick underline, and in the margin, his handwriting smaller than usual. Do not pursue, they said it was goodwill. I stared at the page for a long time. Richardson was one of the biggest aerospace subcontractors in the region, and I remembered Dad working late for them. Blueprints rolled across the table. Calls he took outside, a look in his eyes that said, I can't get this wrong. And yet no payment, no closure, no fight, until now. Diane looked over the notes with a familiar spark in her eyes. He never billed them, she asked. No, he was told not to, I said. They said it was a favor, but it was a full-wing stabilizer redesign, 3 weeks of work. She closed the folder. That's theft with a handshake. 2 days later, she sent a demand letter to Richardson Aerospace. 4 days after that, a man in a Navy suit called her office asking if we could avoid litigation. I sat in on the Zoom call, didn't say a word, just listened as they offered $10,000, then 15, then 25. Diane smiled like a shark in calm water. No, you'll pay what the work was worth and the time it took to bury it. We settled at $31,000. Not because I needed the money, but because Dad had earned it. And because I wasn't going to let someone else put a final period on his life's work. When the check arrived, I didn't deposit it right away. I sat with it, held the weight of it in my hand, a piece of paper he never got to hold, for work he never bragged about, for loyalty that had been turned into silence. I opened the compass, not for the coordinates, not for the hidden message, just for the feeling. I held it in one hand, the check in the other, and suddenly I understood he hadn't left me a tool, he'd left me a test, not of strength, of direction. I used that final payment to build something small, a scholarship in his name, the Ellis Baring Grant for one engineering student a year who didn't come from legacy or privilege, just curiosity, no essay required, just a drawing, one page, one idea, something that made the world steadier, clearer, better, just like he had. Ethan never showed up again. He moved out quietly, collected his things while I was gone. I heard from a mutual friend that he pitched a startup idea using my name and backstory. She told him I'd trademarked the Baring Foundation. I hadn't, but I did the next day. Riley texted once more, months later, just 2 words, "You win." I didn't reply, because it was never a game. Sandra sold the house. I let her keep the furniture. I didn't want any of it. What I kept were the pieces Dad left behind, not the things people see, but the things they miss when they only look at the surface. The quiet blueprints, the hidden instructions, the reminder that not all legacies come with fanfare. Some come with silence and steel. Today, the compass sits on my nightstand. I don't wear it. I don't need to. But sometimes, when the world spins a little too fast, I open it just to hear the click, just to see the words. Always find your bearing. And I remember. It wasn't just a compass, it was a promise that even when others try to steal your time, your worth, your direction, if you hold your course long enough, they can't keep you from where you're meant to go. Because true direction isn't inherited. It's reclaimed, one choice at a time, one line at a time, one quiet no in a room full of people expecting yes. Have you ever had to rebuild what someone tried to take from you? If so, leave a comment. I still found my way. Because no one gets to steal your direction unless you let them.